Okay, fine, there's more to this game than I expected, and it has some cool ideas, they were just executed in a boring way. Hi, my name is Brian, and welcome to the Sims game no one asked for. For years I've had this vague memory, and it would creep into the back of my head once in a while. The memory is of a 1280 by 1024 monitor, and on it a Sims character hitting a training dummy with a sword. And then I fully remember that it was Sims Medieval, the definition of meh compressed into a video game. But after years of shoving it down the memory hole, I decided, fine, I'll play it. Sims can be thought of as a baby's first simulation game, but some people definitely do stop at Sims and think that it's the best they're gonna get, and nothing else interests them. And hey, good for you, but when I play Sims I find myself asking questions and saying things like, why am I making this character learn guitar instead of learning it myself? I should really work out regularly like my Sim does. I should learn how to cook. Is painting really that profitable? Now, if I'm asking myself these questions, then the video game is doing the opposite of what it's supposed to do. A video game is supposed to make me forget my responsibilities, not put them in the front of my mind. So I need to play something different from my life. This is where Sims Medieval comes in. In the Sims Medieval, you manage a kingdom. Okay, not exactly. You play Sims that have these specific roles, like a knight or monarch, and you do quests with them that will make these infographic bars turn green instead of red. When I started playing I had nothing, and all the bars were neutral, so I decided security is pretty important for a kingdom. And so I chose the quests that improved security, and throughout my gameplay more and more guards start appearing in the kingdom. I've also noticed that low culture will affect the mood of your Sims. If you have poor well-being, then Sims start getting sick and unhappy. As it turns out, the plague is a hell of a mood killer. Knowledge makes you smarter, meaning that you'll get a bonus to XP gain and Sims can become inspired, whatever that is. There might be more differences, but hey, I can't spoil everything. Before you're allowed to play the game, you have to select an ambition. The ambitions give you these grand goals for your playthrough, like finish as many quests as you can or take over as much territory as you can. They also tell you how many quests you're allowed to do through the quest system. So for example, you get 50 quest points and quests cost anywhere from 1 to 5 quest points. And to me that's pretty antithetical to what Sims is. Sims is about endless play of the same family or same world at least. But there is an endless ambition that has infinite quest points, so infinite play is available. Plus you can play after the ambition ends, so in my opinion just ignore the ambitions. You don't make your own buildings in this like in the normal Sims. Instead, you buy a building with resource points which you get from completing quests. And the only change you can do to this building is the furnishing. It's kinda like playing with a dollhouse. Instead of improving various skills, you have a leveling system. It's a very simple 1 to 10 system. Everything you do just gives XP towards this one progression bar, so the entire progression of your character just has one bar. The needs also got simplified, having only an energy bar and a hunger bar. Usually in Sims you micromanage every single thing a person could need or want, but that's way too complicated for Sims Medieval. You can still do most of the normal Sim stuff, like make friends, make food, make enemies, make babies, and make pee-pee poo-poo. But you can murder in this one. You can duel to the death, or send people to the pit. You can also commit suicide in the pit. Ages 12 and up, by the way. Also, it's a game where discussing politics is considered a friendly action. Like 30 hours into the game, I finally learn about the territory system, and it's probably the most interesting part of the whole game. It's also pretty funny because it makes your king or queen an underhanded dickhead. Step 1 of annexing a territory is making an alliance with them. So whenever a territory would make an alliance with me, it was like inviting the vampire into their home. Step 2 is completing the annexation quest you get after making the alliance. This involves a team up of 2 heroes, and I use the term hero very loosely, working together to either help a territory with its biggest problem, and they will be so grateful that they will let you annex them, or you mercilessly attack their economy and corner them into annexation. I'll tell you my story of annexation, but first I want to tell you the basics of the heroes you can play. The Monarch. This is your king or queen and the first character you play, and the character you will probably play most since he can do a lot of the quests. He sits on the throne and listens to people's problems, and here you have the choice of being a good king or a bit of a meanie. He also does a lot of sentencing war criminals to the stocks, but that's not the worst punishment. The worst punishment is being horrifically eaten alive by the local pit monster. This is usually reserved for tax evasion. If you think about what job you would be doing in a medieval setting, what do you think you would do? I think a lot of people would want to be the knight or a monarch, but I think I would rather be a blacksmith. Just staying in my smithy/home all day working on something in peace? Yeah, that's the dream life. The knight. The knight does standard guard and hero work. He goes on adventures and duels the local troublemaker. If there's a problem in the kingdom, then the knight goes and swings a sword at it. The spy is kind of an asshole. He will start a conversation with you just to pickpocket you, poison your food, or wait hours for you to start a conversation just to eavesdrop on it. The spy is an evil, but a necessary one to keep the kingdom safe. The priest. The priest makes the people believe that there's an all-powerful being that controls everything in their world and can see everything they do. Yes, very funny joke. The player is God in this world. He also stands around doing this a lot. The bard is actually a tavern keep, but as a hobby she makes plays about why you shouldn't be rude. Also she drinks. A lot. It's like every other quest step. Medieval medicine is so wacky and fun. A patient comes in with dysentery, what do? You throw some leeches on him, wait around for a while, and then pronounce him cured. You could also take some flowers, ground them into dust, and then inject him directly into the toe to cure his eye infection. In my playthrough I was dealing with the plague, and a patient came in about it, and I started researching the cure, and I thought I had reached the solution, so I gathered the flowers, ground them into dust, mixed them with water or spit, just whatever liquid was around, and then I injected the patient with it. And he died. I made the plague just much worse, and I murdered the man. The patient should have gone to the wizard. He would have cured him. Maybe. Depending on how he feels and whether he can get it up, so to speak. If the mood strikes him, the wizard could end poverty overnight, but he won't, because wizards are typically plagued by what-if syndrome. Yes, I could end poverty, but what if that destroys the balance of the world and creates a genocide somehow? So instead he directs his impotent rage into turning people into frogs and undoing the work of wizards who are actually willing to do something. But the wizard can sleep standing up, that alone makes him a demigod. The wizard could destroy your kingdom, but the merchant definitely will, if she stands to profit from it. Magic is powerful, sure, but nothing is as powerful as money. People will do whatever you want as long as you pay them enough. And the merchant is an expert in using money to get what she wants. She will say or do whatever she needs to in order to get you to buy her products. She's a heartless monster, and I'll give you an example. Remember earlier when I told you about annexation? I did one of those with a merchant. I wanted to get the territory of Yakothia from the Jacobin Church, and one of the choices to annex them was to use the Jacobin priest and the merchant. And I thought it was such a weird combo, like is the merchant just gonna buy the territory? And why would the priest betray the church? Then I remembered that medieval priests were just lazy slimeballs that did way too little work for all the power they had. And they displayed a pattern of trying to gain more and more power, so it wasn't that out of character for a priest to want to gain more power over his or her own church. But let's get into the story of it. From now on, the Jacobin Church will just be the church, and Yakothia will be Palestine. The king hands out the order to gain some advantage over Palestine so that he can annex it, and he asks the merchant to look into it. Then the merchant asks the priest to help her and asks if there are any resources important to the church. And the priest immediately says yes, they need Tritonian velvet for the ceremony of the new pope. Then the merchant says, "We are gonna buy all of the velvet in the world." So the merchant sails to neighboring countries and buys their velvet, but the priest, she goes to the church's secret lair and steals all their velvet reserves. Okay, I'm realizing at this point that the priest is actually way worse than the merchant. But anyway, the high priestess of the church is visiting, and so the merchant goes up to her and brags about owning all the velvet. And she asks how they could possibly have the Pope ceremony without the velvet. And the poor fool of a priestess lets it slip that the Tritonian velvet doesn't really matter, because the powder for white smoke is all the craze in Palestine. And I think you know exactly what the merchant does next. A merchant boat trip and a priest lair raiding, and all the white powder is in the merchant's packet. She lets the high priestess know of it, and the priestess says this: "I was afraid it would come to this. Yes, Temperance, you have effectively crippled Palestine." And thusly Palestine becomes annexed under my kingdom of poker, and this is where the game is at its best. I think if the game was more this and less, well, a gutted version of Sims, then it would be way better. Now it's time for general annoyances, and they are in no particular order, and there is probably more annoyances in the game than I cover here. But these are the ones that consistently annoyed the hell out of me. The worst part is if you need anything from other Sims, like if you're a knight and need orders from the king, you have to spam the throne until the monarch decides, "Yeah, okay, fine, I'll sit on the throne." And then you have to do it all over again because you missed the 3-second window of him sitting in the fucking chair. It's incredibly annoying. You need to say a sentence to a sim, but you can't because they're sleeping or in the village shop. So now you have to wait for the brain-dead AI to make itself available. Did you pick insomnia as a fatal flaw? Then do yourself a favor and send the sim to the pit. It's the flaw that consistently fucks your focus, and the only thing you can do is wait. And it stops your sim sleeping almost every damn time. And I think most fatal flaws are kinda like that, but insomnia was definitely the worst I've experienced. The fatal flaws all seem to be very hard hitting, and I think that was kind of the right call for this game. Even if it was executed in an annoying way, because at least it gives you something to do. And with that meaningless quest timer, it gives you some conflict and a, "oh no, I'm in a race against time" kind of vibe, even though that timer means nothing. It's something to put your focus in the red, and you often can't progress in the game if your focus is in the red, so, because of the fatal flaw system, you randomly get 2 to 5 minute periods where you have to deal with fatal flaw focus bullshit. And sometimes a sim will just cancel what you told them to do, and that is probably the most unbelievably annoying thing I've experienced in a video game in the past probably 10 years. This isn't really an annoyance, but I feel like there's nothing I want to spend my money on in this game. I have 30,000 simoleons on a sim, and there is nothing that I'm excited about buying or anything I need to buy. Once I buy a scribe table and a training dummy, I pretty much have everything I need. Except for maybe a bed and a place to make food. I would say you would need to buy a toilet, but you don't really need that. Maybe something hero specific like a better research table for the wizard. And this really highlights two fundamental issues with the game. Number one is the leveling system. Because they simplified the skill system, there is no reason to buy specific skill related furniture like in normal Sims. So money loses value because it isn't really tied into the progression anymore. Number two is the general lack of freedom in the game, at least compared to the main Sims games. There you are in control over almost everything and have the freedom to do almost everything. But Medieval doesn't feel like that. Medieval feels like I'm constantly being forced down a path that the developers decided I should go down. It's like that with the quest system, and it's like that with these dollhouse buildings. So they imported the Sims gameplay into a medieval setting and then simplified it. Why? Why simplify it? Did they think that it would be too much to manage along with the quest system? Why wasn't it possible to have player-made buildings? This got a good reception at release, so why wasn't it supported longer and expanded upon? Why was this even made? It's completely out of left field. I have 3 theories, and these theories could be true at the same time. Theory 1, that it was an expansion pack for Sims 3, but it grew too big for the confines of Sims 3 and that it could only be its own game. Theory 2, this didn't start as a Sims game, it was supposed to be a kingdom simulator. Most of my evidence for this is just playing this weirdo game and thinking about it. But looking this game up, you don't really see a lot of the people behind the game, and the only real mention of a person in charge is Rachel Bernstein. And well, information about her is scarce, but these are the games she's most known for. Imperialism, a game where you are in charge of a 19th century country and you try to rule the world. Tropico 2, a city building game, and Trade Empires, a game about building a merchant empire. Given Rachel's history, I think it could very well be possible that someone higher up walked in on the development and said that this should be a Sims. But that's just a theory, a game theory. Theory 3. Medieval was intended to expand the Sims universe, so maybe you would have a Sims Medieval, then the normal Sims, then probably Sims in Space, then Sims 1776, Birth of America, and each of these universes would then be subject to hundreds of expansion packs leading to big monies for EA and a happy fan base if all went well. But as we know now, it didn't go that way, and Sims Medieval didn't take off as much as it needed to. With only one expansion pack, you could say that this was a flop compared to the rest of the Sims family. The Sims 2, 3 and 4 are all addicting games that you sink multiple hours into and it will feel like only 30 minutes to a single hour has passed. But that isn't the case with Sims Medieval. At the 30-minute mark of a medieval game session, I can already feel the boredom setting in. And 30 minutes later, I can physically feel the boredom. The little annoyances and the repetition and the long drawn-out quests break you down until you need an escape. The hero system is a cool idea, and I think there was a lot more that could have been done with it. Like, if the merchant job isn't being done well enough, then the kingdom starts falling apart. I also think it would have been way better if you could switch seamlessly between the heroes. But as it stands, once you select a quest, you are locked into the hero you chose for it. There should have also been a more fleshed out kingdom system. The one that's here is just an interface to buy buildings, select a quest, or creating a quest through the annexation system. And that's pretty much it. The small stuff that's there is meaningless, and if there is something meaningful there, well then I didn't experience it during my 53 hours with the game. I think the hero system and the kingdom system are both hamstrung by the game being a Sims game. All the great medieval kingdom mechanics here are pulled back so they can fit within a Sims game. And the Sims part of this game was pulled back for the kingdom mechanics. This feels like a game in conflict with itself. And the developer could come and prove me wrong, but the game will still feel like this to me. Also, the game didn't have mod support. Mods are important in the Sims community. I don't think this should have been a Sims game. I think it could have been way better as something else, but I understand that the Sims brand sells. When thinking about that annexation system and that story I told you, I realized that the worst part about it was the Sims part of it all. The idea of playing out economically crippling a country is really interesting, but then the excitement for it gets lost in the tedium of the quest system and the Sims gameplay. Don't get me wrong, the Sims aren't bad games, they're very enjoyable, but this game takes the freedom and control that you have in the main Sims games and takes it away from you. The Sims are sandbox games where you can do pretty much whatever you want. The Sims Medieval is a sandbox game where that mean teacher from your elementary school is sitting on a bench next to the sandbox telling you to make a sandcastle the right way. There was a huge potential here for a complex and interesting game, but the parts that could have been interesting ended up being boringly simple and surface level. I'm Petrified Ogre, and this has been Sims Medieval.
Hello. Da, 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 da.